My name is Renee Foster. I'm 32 years old, and this Christmas, my own parents told me not to come home because, in their words, it's no place for losers. Those words didn't just sting. They didn't just hurt. They broke something inside me that I didn't even know could break anymore. I thought I'd built up enough calluses over the years, enough emotional scar tissue to withstand their casual cruelty. I was wrong. If you've ever been made to feel unwanted by your own family, if you've ever stood at a door you used to call home and felt like a stranger, an intruder, a burden, then you'll understand this story. You'll understand the kind of pain that doesn't make you scream or cry in the moment. The kind that just freezes you, hollows you out from the inside until you're not sure what's left. Before I tell you how I calmly, quietly, and completely turned the tables on the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single one, and I promise you, your words matter to me. Because right now, in this moment, I need to know I'm not alone. And maybe you need to know that too. It was Christmas Eve, 6:47 in the evening. I remember the exact time because I kept checking my phone in the car, psyching myself up, telling myself this year would be different. This year, they'd see me, really see me, not as the checkbook or the safety net or the responsible one, but as their daughter, their sister, their family. I had gifts in the back seat, carefully wrapped presents for my niece and nephew, a dollhouse I'd spent 3 weekends assembling and painting by hand, and a complete Lego robotics kit because my nephew had mentioned, just once, 3 months ago, that he liked building things. I remembered. I always remembered. The neighborhood looked like a Christmas card. Every house glowing with warm light, inflatable Santas and reindeer dotting front lawns, that perfect dusting of snow that makes everything look clean and magical. My parents' house sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, and as I pulled up, I could see the living room window lit up with their tree, a massive 9-footer covered in the ornaments we'd collected as kids, each one with a story, a memory. I pulled 2 bags of gifts from the trunk, my breath fogging in the cold air, and walked up the driveway. I could hear laughter inside. Music. The clink of glasses. My heart did this stupid, hopeful little flutter, and I hated myself for it even then. For still wanting their approval. For still believing that maybe tonight, they'd wrap their arms around me and tell me they were proud. I didn't knock. I never knocked. This was supposed to be my home too. But when I opened the door, my brother Marcus was standing right there in the entryway, blocking it like a bouncer at a club I wasn't cool enough to enter. He had this look on his face, not surprise, not even annoyance. Just discomfort. Like I was a bill collector or a Jehovah's Witness who'd caught him at a bad time. Renee, he said. Just my name. Flat. No warmth. Merry Christmas, Marcus. I said, trying to keep my voice light, trying to pretend I didn't see the way he'd positioned himself to prevent me from coming further inside. I brought gifts for Emma and Tyler. Are they here? He didn't move. Behind him, I could see into the living room. My mother was standing near the fireplace in her good cashmere sweater, the one I'd bought her last year for her birthday, holding a glass of red wine. She looked at me, directly at me, and then looked away. Deliberately. Intentionally. Like I was something unpleasant she needed to avoid acknowledging. My father sat in his leather recliner, the one he'd had since I was 10, staring at the television, even though it wasn't on. His jaw was set. His hands gripped the armrests. He wouldn't look at me either. Listen, Renee, Marcus said, and his voice had that patronizing edge it always got when he was about to tell me something for my own good. Mom and Dad asked me to. Maybe this isn't the best time for you to be here. I stood there, cold air rushing in from outside, bags of gifts in my hands, staring at my older brother, the man I'd idolized as a child, who used to let me tag along to his high school football games, who taught me how to ride a bike, and I genuinely couldn't process what he was saying. What do you mean? I asked. My voice sounded small, childlike. It's Christmas. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable, glancing back at our parents like he was waiting for backup that wasn't coming. It's just, they said it's no place for losers right now. Family only. Family only. The words hung in the air between us, like smoke, like poison. I watched his mouth move. He was saying something else, something about maybe after the holidays, and you know how mom gets, but I couldn't hear him anymore. There was this ringing in my ears, this pressure building behind my eyes that made everything go slightly blurry. The Christmas lights on their tree twinkled merrily in the background, red and green and gold, casting warm shadows across the room where my family, my blood, my history, my first source of love in this world, stood together in a tableau that deliberately excluded me. The smell of my mother's famous honey-glazed ham wafted from the kitchen. Cinnamon candles. Pine. All the sensory markers of home, of belonging, of tradition. And I was standing on the wrong side of an invisible line, being told I didn't belong. I looked down at the gifts in my hands. The dollhouse I'd painted pink and white with tiny hand-stenciled flowers on the shutters. The Lego kit I'd researched for hours to make sure it was the right difficulty level, the right interests. Proof of my love. Proof of my attention. Proof that I cared, that I remembered, that I showed up. And none of it mattered. I raised my eyes back to Marcus. He looked uncomfortable but resolute. Behind him, my mother took a long sip of wine, still refusing to make eye contact. My father's knuckles were white on the armrests. Something inside me, something I'd been protecting, nurturing, keeping alive despite years of evidence that I shouldn't, finally, quietly died. "You're right," I whispered. Marcus blinked. "What?" "You're right," I said again, louder this time. "Clearer." "This is no place for me." I set the bags down carefully on the porch, right there in front of him. I turned around. I walked back to my car with my spine straight and my head up, even though everything inside me was screaming, collapsing, shattering into pieces so small I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to put them back together. I didn't cry. Not then. I just got in my car, turned on the engine, and drove away from the house where I grew up, away from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, away from the last shred of hope I'd been stupidly, desperately clinging to. And in my rearview mirror, I watched the warm glow of their Christmas celebration grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. The drive home was 23 minutes. I know because I counted every single one, watching the digital clock on my dashboard tick forward with excruciating slowness, each minute feeling like an hour, like a year, like a lifetime of accumulated pain condensing into this one endless stretch of road. I didn't turn on the radio. I couldn't stand the thought of cheerful Christmas music, of "I'll be home for Christmas," or "Have yourself a merry little Christmas," or any of those songs that promised warmth and belonging and family gathered around a tree. I drove in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached, staring at the taillights of the car ahead of me, focusing on the simple mechanics of driving so I wouldn't have to think about what had just happened. But the thoughts came anyway. They always do. Numb. That's the word for what I felt. Not angry yet. Not even really sad. Just numb. Empty. Like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything that made me feel human, leaving behind this hollow echo chamber where my heart used to be. The roads were slick with ice. I should have been driving more carefully. But part of me, a dark, reckless part one didn't recognize, almost hoped I'd slide, crash, end this horrible night in a way that would at least make them feel something. Guilt, maybe. Regret. A single moment of, oh God, what did we do? But I didn't crash. I just kept driving, past houses full of families, past decorated storefronts and churches with nativity scenes lit up in their front yards, past every symbol of the holiday I'd once loved and now felt like a cruel joke designed specifically to torment me. And that's when the memories started flooding in. Not the good ones. Not childhood Christmases or birthday parties or family vacations. No. The other ones. The pattern I'd been too close to see, too invested to acknowledge, too desperate for their love to admit was happening. 3 years ago. My mother calling, her voice tight with stress, telling me that Dad's business was struggling, that they were behind on the mortgage, that they might lose the house. Me, immediately transferring $15,000, my emergency fund, the money I'd been saving to finally take that trip to Italy I'd been dreaming about since college. Just until we get back on our feet, she'd said. You're such a blessing, Renee. So responsible. I never saw that money again. Never even got a thank you card. 2 years ago. Marcus losing another job. His third in 18 months. Him showing up at my apartment at 11 at night, his wife Jessica in the car with the kids, telling me they were about to be evicted, that he just needed help with rent for a few months until he found something new. Me setting up an automatic payment from my account to his landlord. $350 a month. For 2 years. $8,400 total. He found a new job after 4 months. Never mentioned stopping the payments. I never had the courage to bring it up. Last year. Emma's private school tuition. Tyler's hockey league fees. My mother's new car when hers broke down. My father's medical bills when his insurance didn't cover everything. Every time they came to me. Every time I said yes. Every time they took what they needed and walked away without question, without gratitude, without ever once asking if I could actually afford it, if I had dreams of my own, if I was struggling too. And I let them. God help me, I let them every single time, because I thought that's what love looked like. I thought if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, proved myself valuable enough, they'd finally see me as more than just the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who had her life together, the one they could use. I pulled into my apartment complex, a modest 2-bedroom in a neighborhood that was safe but not fancy, affordable but not impressive. Nothing like the 4-bedroom house Marcus and Jessica lived in. The house whose rent I'd been subsidizing for 2 years. I sat in the parking lot with the engine still running, heat blowing on my face, and I finally let myself admit the truth I'd been running for my entire adult life. I'd never been part of a family. I'd been their safety net, their ATM, their bailout plan, the person they called when they needed something but never when they wanted to celebrate, to connect, to just be together. And the most crushing realization of all, they didn't even respect me for it. The generosity they'd encouraged, praised, and exploited had become the very reason they looked down on me. I was the sucker, the easy mark, the loser who'd give away everything she had for scraps of affection that never actually came. Generosity had become my leash, and their approval was the treat they dangled. Always just out of reach, always conditional. Always one more sacrifice away. The numbness started to crack. Underneath it, I felt something else. Something cold and clear and sharp. Clarity. This ends tonight. Marcus had always been the golden child. That's not bitterness speaking, it's just fact. From the time we were kids, he was the one who got the attention, the praise, the endless second chances. He was charismatic where I was quiet. Bold where I was cautious. He made mistakes loudly, dramatically, in ways that demanded everyone's attention and forgiveness. I made straight A's. He barely graduated high school. But somehow, his CS were celebrated as triumphs while my perfect report cards were just expected. Of course Renee did well. She's the responsible one. He played football. I played violin. His games drew crowds, my parents, their friends, half the neighborhood showing up to watch him score touchdowns and soak in their pride. My recitals? My mother came to 2. My father came to none. Someone has to keep the business running, he'd say, as if his small accounting firm would collapse during my 45-minute concert. The pattern was set early, and it never changed. It just got more expensive. Marcus's first real job out of high school was at a car dealership. He lasted 6 months before getting fired for showing up late too many times. My parents consoled him, told him it wasn't his fault, that his boss was unreasonable. They helped him find another job at my father's friend's construction company. That lasted 8 months. Then it was a warehouse job. Then retail. Then sales. By the time he was 25, he'd been through a dozen jobs, and the excuse was always the same. Bad boss, bad timing, bad luck. Never bad work ethic. Never bad choices. Never Marcus's fault. I was 23, 2 years out of college, working 50-hour weeks at a marketing firm and putting myself through a master's program at night. I was tired all the time. I lived on coffee and instant ramen and 3 hours of sleep. But I was building something. A career. A future. Independence. And then Marcus met Jessica. She was sweet. I liked her immediately. She was grounded in a way Marcus wasn't, practical, seemed to bring out something better in him. They got married fast. Too fast, my gut told me, but I kept my mouth shut. I was a bridesmaid. I paid for my own dress and helped throw the bridal shower and gave them a generous check as a wedding gift that I absolutely could not afford. 6 months later, Jessica was pregnant with Emma. Marcus was between jobs again. They needed help with the deposit on a bigger apartment. Just $2,000, my mother said when she called me. They'll pay you back. I sent the money the next day. I never got it back. That's when it started in earnest. The slow, steady drain of my resources, my time, my energy, all funneled toward keeping Marcus's life afloat while mine, what was I getting in return? The title of responsible one? The knowledge that I was holding the family together? Tyler was born 2 years later. More expenses. More emergencies. More late-night calls from Marcus or Jessica or my mother. Always asking, never offering. By then, I'd stopped thinking of it as loans. I knew I'd never see the money again. But I told myself it didn't matter. This was family. This was love. Emma needed speech therapy. I paid for it. Tyler needed new glasses every 6 months because he kept losing or breaking them. I paid for those too. Marcus's car broke down. Jessica's student loans were crushing them. Emma wanted to go to private school. Tyler wanted to play hockey, and equipment wasn't cheap. Birthday parties, Christmas gifts, emergency vet bills for their dog, repairs on the house they were renting, groceries when Marcus's unemployment ran out again. I paid for all of it. Not because they asked, though they did, constantly, but because my parents expected it. You're doing so well, Renee, my mother would say, as if my careful budgeting and lack of social life and secondhand furniture were signs of prosperity rather than sacrifice. It's wonderful that you can help your brother during this difficult time. Difficult time. As if his entire adult life wasn't a series of difficult times caused by his own poor decisions and enabled by our parents' endless excuses. But I couldn't say that. Not out loud. Because that would make me the bad guy. The selfish one. The one who put money before family. So I stayed silent. I paid. I sacrificed. I showed up to every birthday party and holiday dinner with expensive gifts and a smile, pretending I didn't notice how they took my presents and my money for granted. And somewhere along the way, I disappeared. Not physically. But the person I'd been before all this, the woman with dreams and ambitions and a life of her own, slowly faded into nothing more than a support system for people who didn't even like me. They loved what I could do for them. They loved the safety net I provided. But me? The actual person underneath all that usefulness? I don't think they ever knew her at all. I walked into my apartment at 7:43. I remember because the numbers on my microwave clock seemed to glow with unusual brightness, like they were marking something significant, a before and after. My apartment was quiet. Clean. Spare. I'd never bothered decorating much because I'd always told myself I was saving for something bigger, something better. But the truth was simpler and more pathetic. I'd been too busy funding everyone else's lives to build my own. I stood in the middle of my living room for a long moment, still wearing my coat, still carrying my purse, and I felt something crystallize inside me. Not anger yet. Something colder. More resolved. I sat down at my kitchen table, the cheap IKEA one I'd bought 6 years ago and kept meaning to replace, and opened my laptop. The screen lit up. I logged into my bank account, then my credit card accounts, then the automatic payment portal I'd set up years ago to make it easier to help my family. So efficient. So responsible. So completely, utterly stupid. I stared at the list of recurring payments. Marcus's rent, $350 per month, Emma's tuition, $800 per month Tyler's hockey league, $200 per month my parents' supplemental insurance, $150 per month my mother's gym membership, $80 per month the family Netflix account, $20 per month Marcus's car insurance, $180 per month. And those were just the regular ones. That didn't count the one-time emergencies that happened every few weeks. Didn't count the grocery money I'd send when Jessica texted that they were short. Didn't count the gas cards, the Target gift cards, the PayPal transfers for things that were never quite explained. I did the math. Just the recurring payments added up to $1,780 a month. $21,360 a year. For 5 years. Over $100,000.
Gone.
Poured into the black hole of Marcus's inability to support himself and my parents' refusal to stop enabling him. $100,000 I could have used to buy a house. Travel the world. Start a business. Build an actual life instead of this hollow existence where I worked constantly and had nothing to show for it except the knowledge that my family wouldn't end up homeless or hungry. My finger hovered over the mouse. 1 click. That's all it would take to cancel each payment. 1 click per sacrifice. 1 click per year of being taken for granted. 1 click per Christmas I'd spent pretending to be happy while slowly drowning in debt and exhaustion and the growing realization that I was the only person in my family who actually worked for what I had. I thought about Marcus standing in the doorway, blocking me from entering. The casual cruelty of it. The ease with which he'd delivered their rejection. It's no place for losers. As if I was the problem. As if I was the one who'd failed. I clicked. Marcus's rent. Cancelled. Another click. Emma's tuition. Cancelled. Another. Tyler's hockey. Cancelled.
Click. Click. Click.
Each one felt like cutting a string. Like dropping a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. With each cancellation, I felt lighter.
Clearer.
More myself than I'd been in years. I wasn't crying. I thought I might. Thought this moment might be full of grief or regret or second thoughts. But instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in so long I'd almost forgotten what it was called. Relief. I smiled. Actually smiled. A small, genuine expression of something that might have been joy or might have been the grim satisfaction of finally standing up for myself. It took 5 minutes. 5 minutes to undo 5 years of being their doormat. 5 years of sacrificing my happiness, my security, my future for people who couldn't even be bothered to let me in the door on Christmas Eve. I closed my laptop, sat back in my chair, took a deep breath that felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. Tomorrow, they'd notice. Tomorrow, the calls would start. The anger, the accusations, the guilt trips. But tonight? Tonight, I was free. The call started at 6:17 the next morning. Christmas Day. I was still asleep when my phone started buzzing on my nightstand, dragging me out of the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. Marcus's name lit up my screen. I stared at it for a long moment, watching it ring and ring, and then I did something I'd never done before in my entire life. I declined the call. It felt revolutionary. He called back immediately. I declined again. Then came the text messages. Renee, call me. It's important. Seriously, we need to talk. Pick up your phone. I turned on my coffee maker and ignored my phone entirely. I made scrambled eggs. I sat by my window watching snowfall on the parking lot. I existed in my own space, on my own terms, without jumping to attention the moment my family demanded it. It felt incredible. By noon, I had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. Marcus, my mother, my father, even Jessica, which surprised me. The messages evolved from polite to concerned to demanding to outright hostile in the span of a few hours. My mother, Renee, your brother says there's been some kind of mistake with the payments? Marcus, what the hell did you do? Emma's tuition didn't go through. My father, this is extremely disappointing behavior, Renee. Call your brother immediately. Marcus again. You can't just cut us off. We're family. That one made me laugh. A short, bitter sound that echoed in my quiet apartment. We're family.
Right.
Family when they needed money. Losers when they didn't. I finished my coffee. I watched a movie. I ordered Chinese takeout and ate it slowly, savoring every bite, marveling at how peaceful my apartment felt without the constant anxiety of waiting for the next emergency, the next request, the next way I'd be expected to prove my worth. At 3 in the afternoon, my doorbell rang. Insistently. Aggressively. The kind of ringing that suggested whoever was on the other side had no intention of leaving. I looked through the peephole. Marcus. His face was red, his jaw clenched. He looked furious. I almost didn't open the door. Almost pretended I wasn't home. But I realized something in that moment. I was done hiding. Done making myself small. Done apologizing for existing. I opened the door, but left the chain on. "What did you do?" he demanded before I could even speak. No hello. No Merry Christmas. Just immediate accusation. All the payments bounced. Emma's school called Jessica this morning demanding the tuition. The landlord says we're going to be late on rent. What the hell, Renee? I looked at him through the 6-inch gap in the door. My older brother. The person I'd idolized as a child. The person I'd spent years supporting, sacrificing for, believing in despite all the evidence that he'd never change, never grow up, never take responsibility for his own life. And I felt nothing. No guilt. No obligation. No desperate need to fix his problems. "I cancel the payments," I said calmly. "You what? Why?" He looked genuinely confused, as if the connection between their rejection and my response was incomprehensible. "Because you called me a loser, Marcus. You stood in Mom and Dad's doorway on Christmas Eve and told me I didn't belong with my own family. So, I decided you were right. I don't belong. Which means I also don't have any obligation to keep funding your life." His face cycled through expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger. That's not. You can't just. He couldn't seem to finish a sentence. "We need that money, Renee. Emma's school, the rent, everything. Then get a job that pays enough to cover it," I said. Like I did. Like most adults do. "I have a job. You've had 12 jobs in 8 years, Marcus. Maybe the problem isn't bad bosses or bad luck. Maybe it's you." His face went dark red. A vein pulsed in his temple. "Who the hell do you think you are? I'm the person who's been supporting you for 5 years. I'm the person who paid for your kids' education and your rent and your car insurance while living in this cheap apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda because I couldn't afford anything better. I'm the person who sacrificed my own life so you could pretend to have yours together." My voice stayed calm, level. That seemed to make him angrier. "But mostly, Marcus, I'm the person you called a loser. So why would a loser have anything to offer you?" "You're being childish," he spat.
Petty.
"This isn't about what I said." "You're right," I interrupted. "It's not. It's about 5 years of taking me for granted. 5 years of using me as your personal ATM while never once, not once, Marcus, saying thank you. Never asking how I was doing. Never wondering if I might be struggling too. Never treating me like a person who mattered instead of just a resource to be exploited. That's not fair. You blocked me from entering my own parents' house on Christmas Eve," I said, and for the first time, my voice shook slightly. "You delivered their rejection like you were turning away a door-to-door salesman. After everything I've done, everything I've given, you made me feel like I was nothing. Like I didn't matter. Like my only value was what I could give you, and when I stopped being useful, I stopped being family." He opened his mouth.
Closed it.
Opened it again. "I didn't. Mom and Dad were. I already did this, Marcus. Past tense. The payments are canceled. They're not coming back. You're going to have to figure out how to support your own family. Like an actual adult." I started to close the door. He grabbed it, stopping me. "Renee, please. Jessica doesn't know how we're going to. We need Emma's school. Figure it out," I said quietly. "The same way I figured out how to pay for my own education. The same way I figured out how to support myself without anyone's help. You're 40 years old, Marcus. It's time." I closed the door. He pounded on it a few more times, shouting things I couldn't quite hear through the wood. Or maybe I just stopped listening. Eventually, he left. I sat on my couch, my hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline, and I realized something. I'd been afraid of this moment for years. Afraid of standing up to them. Afraid of their anger, their disappointment, their rejection. But the rejection had already happened. They'd already cast me out. I had nothing left to lose. And that, strangely enough, made me free. 3 days after Christmas, Jessica called me. I almost didn't answer. I was tired of the messages, the voicemails, the emotional manipulation disguised as concern. My mother had left me a message calling me selfish and ungrateful. My father had texted that I was destroying the family. Marcus had escalated to threats, vague but unmistakable, about how I'd regret treating them this way. But Jessica's call felt different somehow. So I answered. Renee? Her voice was quiet.
Shaky.
Can we meet?
Just you and me?
I need to talk to you about something. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our apartments. Neutral territory. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. She looked exhausted.
Thin.
There were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, I admitted. She nodded.
Took a breath.
I need to show you something. And I need you to know that I didn't know.
Not all of it.
Not until the payments stopped and I started looking into our finances because Marcus was freaking out and wouldn't tell me why. She pulled out her phone and opened a folder full of screenshots. Bank statements, credit card bills, receipts, transaction histories going back months, years. This is Marcus's secret account, she said, turning the phone toward me. I found it 3 days ago. I wasn't snooping. He left his laptop open and I saw a banking notification pop up. When I looked closer, She trailed off. I looked at the screen, scrolled through the images she'd compiled. The transactions painted a picture that made my stomach turn. Online gambling sites. Hundreds of transactions. Thousands of dollars. Some as small as $20, some as large as $500, flowing out steadily over the past 3 years. Sports betting. Casino games.
Poker sites.
This is where the money went, Jessica whispered. All of it. The money sent for Emma's school. He'd transfer it to this account and gamble it.
The rent money.
Everything. He'd pay bills at the last second, always claiming we were short, always asking for more, and I believed him because I trusted him. Because he's my husband. Because I thought we were in this together. I couldn't speak. I just kept scrolling through the evidence of Marcus's betrayal, not just of me, but of Jessica, of their kids, of every person who'd tried to help them. The tuition you paid, Jessica continued, her voice breaking, he'd pay it eventually, but only after gambling with it first. Sometimes he'd win, and we'd seem fine for a few weeks. But mostly he'd lose, and then he'd come to you for more.
You weren't just supporting us, Renee.
You were funding his addiction. And I had no idea. Tears were streaming down her face now. I kept wondering why we were always broke. Why it never got better even when he was working. Why there was never enough. And he'd tell me it was inflation, it was the cost of living, it was unexpected expenses. He made me feel crazy for questioning it, for suggesting we should have more saved up. She looked at me with eyes full of pain and guilt. When you cut us off, he panicked. Not because we couldn't pay rent, we could have. He makes enough. But because he couldn't hide it anymore. Without your money coming in to cover what he was gambling away, everything fell apart. And I finally saw the truth. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt vindicated. I wasn't crazy for feeling used, for sensing that something was wrong beyond just Marcus's unemployment issues. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad for Jessica. Sad for Emma and Tyler. Sad for all the years we'd all wasted enabling someone who was never going to change. I'm leaving him, Jessica said quietly. I'm taking the kids and moving in with my sister in Colorado. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce and full custody. He's stolen from his own children, Renee. From us. From you. And I'm done making excuses for him. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Squeezed it tight. Thank you, she whispered. I know that sounds insane. You didn't mean to do this. You were just protecting yourself. But you saved us. If you hadn't stopped the money, I never would have found out. We would have kept sinking deeper and deeper, and Emma and Tyler would have grown up watching their father destroy us financially while their mother stayed blind to it. She pulled back, wiped her eyes. I'm so sorry.
For everything Marcus did to you.
For all the times I let him ask you for money without questioning it. For not seeing what was really happening. You deserved so much better from this family. I sat there in that coffee shop, holding the truth in my hands, or rather, displayed on Jessica's phone screen, and I realized something profound. I'd thought cutting off the money was about revenge, about punishing them for rejecting me, about making them feel a fraction of the pain they'd caused me. But accidentally, unintentionally, I'd done something much more important. I'd exposed the truth. And in doing so, I'd freed Jessica and the kids from years of financial and emotional abuse they didn't even know was happening. Sometimes the right thing and the selfish thing are the same thing. Sometimes saving yourself means saving others too. My parents called 2 weeks later, both of them on speakerphone, that unified front they'd always presented when one of us was in trouble. Except this time, I wasn't in trouble. I hadn't done anything wrong, and I was done pretending otherwise. Renee, my mother's voice came through, tight with barely controlled anger. We need to talk about what you've done to this family. I was cooking dinner in my apartment, just for me, at a reasonable hour, without rushing or stress. I put her on speaker and kept chopping vegetables. What I've done? I asked calmly. You've broken this family, my father said. His voice had that disappointed quality that used to make me shrivel inside, desperate to fix whatever I'd done wrong. It didn't work anymore. Marcus and Jessica are getting divorced. The kids are being dragged to Colorado. Marcus is having to move back home with us because he can't afford his apartment. Without your help, you've destroyed everything out of spite. I set down my knife, took a slow breath. The old me would have apologized, would have scrambled to explain, to justify, to make them understand, would have bent over backward to take responsibility for problems I didn't create. The new me, the one who'd been forged in the fire of their rejection, just felt tired. No, I said simply. Silence on the other end. No, my mother repeated, her voice sharp with disbelief. No, I didn't break this family. Marcus broke this family when he spent years gambling away money meant for his children. When he lied to his wife about their finances. When he used my generosity and your enabling to fund an addiction that could have destroyed Emma and Tyler's futures. My voice stayed level, factual. I didn't cause his divorce. His choices did. His lies did. His complete lack of responsibility did. That's not. He made mistakes, yes, but you cutting him off like that, so suddenly, without warning. Without warning? I actually laughed. It was a harsh sound, bitter. I gave 5 years of warnings. 5 years of bailing him out while he refused to change. 5 years of watching you both make excuses for a 40-year-old man who should have been supporting his own family. The only thing I did suddenly was stop letting you all take advantage of me. We never took advantage. My father started. You told me not to come home for Christmas. I interrupted, and for the first time, my voice cracked. You called me a loser. You made Marcus physically block me from entering the house where I grew up. You stood there with your wine and your tree and your perfect little family celebration, and you excluded me like I was nothing. Like I didn't matter. Like the only value I had was what I could give you, and since you didn't need money that particular evening, I had no reason to exist. More silence. I could hear my mother breathing on the other end. Sharp, angry breaths. And now you're calling me, I continued, not to apologize, not to ask how I'm doing, not to acknowledge that you hurt me. You're calling to blame me for the consequences of Marcus's actions, to make me responsible for fixing the mess he created. Again, just like always. Renee, he's your brother, my mother tried. And you're my parents. The words burst out of me, louder than I intended, carrying years of suppressed pain. You were supposed to love me, protect me, treat me like I mattered for who I was, not what I could do for you. But you never did. Not once. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who had it together, so you decided that meant I didn't need anything from you. Not support. Not affection. Not even basic respect. I was crying now. I hadn't meant to. Hadn't wanted to give them the satisfaction of knowing they could still hurt me. But the tears came anyway, hot and angry and sad all at once. "I spent my entire adult life trying to earn your love," I whispered. "Trying to prove I was good enough, valuable enough, worthy enough to be treated like family instead of like an ATM.
And it was never enough.
There was always another emergency, another crisis, another reason Marcus needed help, and I needed to provide it. And when I finally stopped, when I finally said no more, you didn't ask why. You didn't wonder if maybe, just maybe, I'd been struggling too. You just got angry that your safety net was gone." "That's not fair," my mother said, but her voice was weaker now. "Maybe being called a loser was the best thing that ever happened to me," I said, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand, "because it finally made me see the truth. I wasn't losing anything by walking away from you. I was gaining myself back. The person I was before I sacrificed everything trying to make you love me." "Renee," my father started. "I'm done," I said quietly. "I'm done explaining. I'm done defending myself. I'm done feeling guilty for protecting myself from people who only valued me for what I could give them. If you want a relationship with me, a real one, not one based on money or obligation, then you need to start seeing me as a person who deserves respect and kindness and basic human decency. Until then, I need space." "You can't just cut off your family," my mother said, and there was something desperate in her voice now. "You cut me off first," I reminded her. "I'm just making it official." I didn't hang up dramatically. I didn't slam anything or yell. I just quietly disconnected the call and turned off my phone. Then I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the simple ingredients of the dinner I was making, just for me, the way I liked it on my own schedule, and I cried. Not desperate, broken sobs like I'd cried that night in the car. These were different.
Cleaner.
Like my body was releasing years of accumulated poison, purging itself of the toxic belief that I was only worth what I could give others. When the tears finally stopped, I washed my face, finished cooking, sat down at my little IKEA table with my plate and a glass of wine I'd bought just because I liked it, not because it was on sale. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, my apartment felt like home. Not exile. Not a temporary stopping point until I got successful enough to impress my family. Not a place I was ashamed of because it wasn't as nice as Marcus's house that I'd been paying for. Home.
Mine.
Enough. Outside, snow was falling softly, covering the parking lot in a clean white blanket, hiding all the dirt and mess underneath, making everything look new again. Maybe that's what I was doing too. Covering the old wounds. Starting fresh. Letting the person I'd been, the desperate, people-pleasing, self-sacrificing doormat, be buried under layers of self-respect and boundaries and the radical act of choosing myself. I picked up my fork and took a bite of the dinner I'd made. It was good. Really good. The kind of meal you make when you're cooking for someone you care about. And, for the first time in my life, that someone was me. 3 months have passed since that Christmas Eve. 3 months since I stood on my parents' porch holding gifts that would never be opened and heard words that would change everything. I wish I could tell you there was some grand reconciliation. Some tearful apology where my parents realized how badly they'd treated me and begged for forgiveness. Some moment where Marcus got sober and became the brother I'd always wanted him to be. But life isn't a Hallmark movie. Sometimes people don't change. Sometimes they double down on their narrative, rewriting history to make themselves the victims and you the villain. Sometimes the only happy ending is the one where you walk away and build something better without them. My parents haven't called again since that conversation. Marcus sends occasional texts, sometimes angry, sometimes pleading, occasionally trying to manipulate me through Emma and Tyler, which is when I block him for a few weeks until he stops. My mother apparently tells people at her church that I abandoned the family in their time of need. My father refuses to speak my name, and you know what? I'm okay with that. Better than okay, actually. Because here's what I've learned in these 3 months of silence, of distance, of finally putting myself first. I am not what I can give. I am not the sum of my usefulness to others. My value doesn't depend on how much I sacrifice, or how many people I can save, or how perfectly I can contort myself to meet everyone else's needs while ignoring my own. I am enough. Just me. Renee Foster, 32 years old, living in a modest apartment, driving an old car, working a normal job. Without the performance. Without the desperate need for approval. Without the crushing weight of other people's problems on my shoulders. I've started therapy twice a week. It's expensive, but you know what? I can afford it now. Turns out when you're not supporting for other adults and their various crises, you have quite a bit of disposable income. My therapist uses words like codependency and enmeshment and trauma bonding, and every session feels like someone's turning on lights in rooms of my psyche I didn't know existed. I've reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with over the years, people I'd stopped seeing because I was always too busy, too stressed, too broke from funding my family's lifestyle. We go out for dinner, to movies, on weekend trips. Normal things that normal people do when they're not drowning in other people's dysfunction. I joined a book club, started taking a pottery class on Thursday evenings, adopted a cat from the shelter, an older orange tabby named Pumpkin who was overlooked because everyone wants kittens. We're both learning what it's like to be chosen for who we are rather than what we can provide. I'm saving money, real money, in an account that nobody else can access. For the first time in my adult life, I'm building something for my future instead of pouring everything into other people's present. And the dreams, the ones I'd buried so deep I'd almost forgotten they existed, are starting to resurface. Maybe I will take that trip to Italy. Maybe I will start my own business. Maybe I will buy a house or go back to school or do something completely unexpected. The point is, I can. The possibilities are open again because I'm not shackled to other people's emergencies. Jessica, and I talk occasionally. She's doing well in Colorado, all things considered. Emma and Tyler are adjusting. She's in therapy too, working through years of financial abuse and manipulation. She thanks me sometimes, and I have to remind her that I didn't do it for her. I did it for me. But I'm glad the collateral damage of my self-preservation turned out to be her liberation. Marcus, from what I hear through Jessica, is still with our parents. Still unemployed. Still blaming everyone but himself. Still waiting for someone else to fix his problems. The difference is I'm not that someone anymore. And apparently, my parents are discovering that enabling an adult child is a lot more exhausting when you're doing it with your own resources instead of mine. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty, if I regret what I did, if I wish things had turned out differently. And the honest answer is no.
Not even a little bit.
Maybe that makes me cold. Maybe that makes me the selfish, spiteful person my mother tells people I am. But I prefer to think it makes me free. Free from the crushing responsibility of managing other people's lives while mine fell apart. Free from the desperate, exhausting, soul-destroying need for approval from people who are never going to give it. Free from the belief that love should hurt this much, cost this much, require this much self-annihilation. Being called a loser was the best thing that ever happened to me, because losing them meant finding myself. The self I'd buried under years of people-pleasing and boundary-breaking and the false belief that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, proved myself enough, they'd finally see me as worthy of their love. But love, real love, healthy love, doesn't work like that. It's not earned through suffering. It's not proven through sacrifice. It's not conditional on your usefulness or your ability to solve other people's problems. Real love is what I'm learning to give myself now. The love that says, you matter. Your needs matter. Your dreams matter. Your peace matters more than their approval. Real love is boundaries. It's saying no. It's walking away from people who hurt you, even when they share your DNA. Especially when they share your DNA, because those are the cuts that go deepest, the wounds that take longest to heal. Real love is this quiet apartment with my cat purring on the couch and dinner cooking on the stove and plans for the weekend that don't involve crisis management or emotional labor or funding someone else's life choices. Real love is the absence of panic. The presence of peace. The radical, revolutionary act of choosing yourself. They called me a loser.
And you know what?
Maybe I did lose something. I lost the fantasy family I'd been desperately trying to create through sheer force of will and an empty bank account. I lost the delusion that if I just tried hard enough, they'd change. I lost the part of myself that believed my worth was tied to their acceptance. But in losing all of that, I won something infinitely more valuable, myself. And that, more than revenge or vindication or any dramatic confrontation, is the real victory.
So here I am.
Renee Foster, 32 years old. Former family doormat. Current work in progress. Future uncertain but finally mine. In the end, revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's distance. Sometimes it's the quiet, private peace of knowing you chose yourself when everyone else wanted you to keep sacrificing. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away and build a life so full of genuine joy and authentic connection that their absence stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like relief. That's where I am now. Relieved.
Lighter. Free.
The anger has faded. The pain has dulled to something manageable, something that therapist says will continue to heal with time and work. What remains is clarity.
Strength.
A bone-deep certainty that I made the right choice, even though it was the hardest one. If you've ever walked away from people who mistook your kindness for weakness, if you've ever had to choose between their comfort and your survival, if you've ever been called names by the very people you were destroying yourself to support, I want you to know something. You're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not the villain in their story, even though they'll try to make you believe you are. You're the hero in your own story. The one who finally said enough. The one who chose life over obligation, authenticity over performance, self-preservation over self-destruction. And that takes more courage than most people will ever understand. Tell me your story in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, what you've walked away from, what you've chosen for yourself instead. Tell me about the family you've built from friends, the boundaries you've set, the peace you've found on the other side of guilt. I read every comment. Every single one. Because we need to know we're not alone in this. We need to hear that other people have made the hard choice and survived. Thrived even. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear this tonight. Someone who's standing at their own crossroads, wondering if they're allowed to choose themselves. Someone who needs permission to walk away from people who only love them conditionally. You are allowed. You are worthy. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. My name is Renee Foster. I'm 32 years old. My family called me a loser and told me not to come home for Christmas. And you know what? They were right about one thing. I did lose something. I lost them. And in return, I found myself. That's not a loss. That's a trade I'd make again in a heartbeat. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for seeing me. Not as what I can give, but as who I am. And to anyone out there who's where I was 3 months ago, standing on that porch with gifts in hand and hope in heart, about to have it shattered, I promise you, there's life on the other side. Beautiful, peaceful, authentic life. You just have to be brave enough to choose it. Choose yourself. Always choose yourself. You're worth it.